Sunday, every weekend on Sunday, we were part of a bhajan group. And my father, and I remember he would come Saturday afternoon, would take a shower and make me sit in front of him, would teach me a bhajan every single weekend. And he was insistent that I should sing a new bhajan. That way I know hundreds of bhajans now.
What does it mean to you, singing well?
If I am singing and it makes me happy, I'm singing very well.
And if it makes suffering to the other people
That's
who hear
their
it?
problem. But I believe music is a tool that exists to express, not impress. Anyone that can feel, anyone that can cry, anyone that can smile, anyone that has an emotional response to a stimulus can sing. Because singing is capturing exactly that.
And how many hours of learning and studying?
You know, you
this?
don't count what you love.
Right.
I mean, if you...
But to give an idea, just because people sometimes, I ask this, you know why I ask this? Because sometimes people think, oh, I'll do an hour of singing class a week and I really want to become as good as Mahesh is.
No, fall in love as much as I have and then you will.
It's about falling in love, and I do agree with you 100%. There is nothing really that replaces that. A lot of people have fantasies about what it means to become all these
Well,
things.
do it until you can do it, and then do it because you can do it, and make it shine.
Mahesh Kale, welcome to the Thinking Bhakti podcast.
Thank you so much.
It's an honor to have you here.
Thank you so much.
So, for those of you who don't know, Mahesh, you're a very renowned classical Indian music singer, teacher, and I would like to know more about how you became this version of yourself and what it is that you do. How did you get to this point of being a singer full-time?
Well, I let myself drift, and then there came a time when I arrived to what I do now. The reason I say drift is because my path has been a little topsy-turvy. I was born in a very typical middle-class Marathi family from Maharashtra in a city called Pune. And the thing with many middle-class families is sustenance is given more importance than excellence. So I was on the path of excellence within the sustenance zone, which means that academically we had to ensure that we did well. So I took on to the science route. I did my bachelor's in electronic engineering. Then I worked briefly for 18 months in India. And then I went to Santa Barbara for grad studies in multimedia engineering. Subsequently, I also had interest in management. And then I ended up doing another master's in engineering management at Santa Clara. After which I decided to give myself a year doing music full time. And it's been close to 2 decades now.
A long year.
Yeah.
What was the reason you wanted that year initially?
You know, ever since I have been friends with music, I have looked at music as my companion, not as a product that'll earn me money.
Right.
I mean, obviously, like I said, I did my master's in management. I knew there was potential, but when it came to my own music, to be able to wear that cap of, being able to go out there and put money in a place of transaction was probably a little challenging for me. So that's why it kept on getting delayed. I was in Philadelphia and I was singing actually. It was around Ashadhi season, which is not too far from now. I was singing a bhajan and then an old lady, she walked up to me. She touched my feet. I was a little embarrassed. picked her up, and she said, both my sons are now in the US and they have filed for my green card. And I used to go to Pandharpur every year, but couldn't. And through your music, I actually was able to experience the pilgrimage to Pandharpur. So then, really, what I paused and thought was, if what gives me joy ends up giving joy to people, then it's a very rare find. And then I should try to figure out my life around that. And that's how it came to be.
It's a beautiful sentiment. I think one of the things that I try to emphasize here on this channel as well, on this podcast, is that it's like what gives us really more fulfillment, more meaning, what is that more profound thing. And that is, in a sense, that which you said brings some service to people, to yourself. It makes people happy, makes yourself happy. What about the music specifically that you do? Because there's all sorts of music. The music that you do, you feel really is unique or special, that really brings that taste, that specialness.
Well, if we were talking about Indian classical music, I think it's one of the rare kinds of music where the music lets you be you. And what I mean by that is, of course, we have time theory of ragas where, let's say, if it is 4:30 in the evening, there is a certain subset of the ragas that you can sing, but you get to choose. Now, within that, you pick the pitch that you want to sing in. You pick the compositions that you want to sing in. While the rag once then is fixed, it comes with a scale and a structure. When the composition is fixed, it comes with a meter and the tempo. But even with all of this, there is an enormous amount of space that is opened. So if you, now giving you an example, like an engineer, if there was a circle, which is a confined space, and you were asked to draw triangles that touched, each corner touched the circle, how many triangles can you draw? The answer is infinite, because it's infinite points make a circle. So I think Indian classical music gives you that space for self-expression within the bounds. It's like home. I mean, you build walls, but those walls liberate you and makes you free within that space. So I look at Indian classical music as my home.
It's a great analogy, yeah. Yeah, it's definitely true. And so you teach Indian classical music as well, but
Yes.
what is, you perform and you teach, and you're trying to bring Indian classical music to new audiences? Is that your goal?
Yes. So the way it started is, I grew up in India, then I went to the Western world, and then again by a chance I was part of a movie that got me the President's Award, and since then I've started to go back to India very often.
Oh.
But subsequently the demand grew for this kind of music, and it's very heartening because from where the music has come, it comes from a place of wellness and goodness. So it comes from prayer, and you are not always praying for yourself, you're praying for the entire world that you belong for. So for me to be able to carry that sentiment first inside of me, then around me, and then travel as far and wide and spread it, because it's one of those things which grows when you actually distribute rather than becomes less. Happiness is that. So I was like, why should we limit happiness to a certain geography or a certain set of people? And that has been my inspiration. I make sure that I factor a portion of my life to teaching, and I also factor a portion of my life for what I call as outreach to people that may not have had a chance to listen to Indian classical music or abhangs, the semi-classical forms.
I'm very curious about this outreach side of it as well, because for sure, if you're doing this outreach work in the West and Western audiences come to you, I'm assuming many of them are Indians living abroad,
Yes.
but also Westerners.
Mm-hmm.
What are the kind of barriers or particularities about that? Because of course they're not so familiar with anything about Indian classical music, neither the meanings of the songs, and how do you bridge that with them?
There is a one-line story that every poem, every song, every picture, every art has. It's one line that actually instigates that art. If you get a buy-in to that one line, I don't think the language becomes a barrier or hindrance. I actually just had a workshop a couple of days ago in Frankfurt, and the Abhang, the song that I taught, was in Marathi, and there were hardly about 20%, not even 20, 10-15% of people were native Marathi speakers. But I explained the song, and within 90 minutes, everyone sang the entire song, not just the words, but the tune. And I could see few people going deep inside themselves, few tearing, few smiling. So I think as long as we are able to connect with the core emotion, then the language is just a facility to express that emotion, and it starts activating itself.
I think it's a shame that a lot of people don't understand that is available, that this kind of connection, this kind of emotion, all this, because I think a lot of people get stuck on the externality.
The reason is because we live outside in, and a lot of decisions that we take are done from what we observe outside in. If we gave ourselves a little more time to look inside, then the outside world will be a projection of what you see within. I just wish there is more people that do that. I mean, I've established, just some time ago we were playing with the birds.
Yes.
Not too long before that I was playing with Jai Vijay, the beautiful dogs. And I feel if we can communicate with living beings that are not the same species, then I think we probably end up overrating the idea of language. While, I mean, great sophistication, philosophy, literature exists because of language, but that's not why language was invented. Language was invented with the core idea of capturing emotions. And if we are not able to speak to our own emotions, then language is not going to take us too far.
That's a very good point. I think something that we've always learned and taught in my own field as well. I teach philosophy, so therefore language is one of those things where we play with it so much that sometimes you become obsessed with it and you start to think it's overvalued, exactly like you said. And
I mean, don't get me wrong, I value the languages and the importance that they bring, but it cannot replace your emotion.
yeah, no, I agree.
There will be no language if there is no emotion. Now, if we are more invested in languages, the heart part of human being goes back and the brain part, and there is a lot of misfiring when you only work with brains, especially.
You're right. It's a lot of theory instead of experience. And I think every genuine spiritual path, for example, tries to address this in some way or another. It's about getting people to experience and moving beyond just the theoretical.
Seriously.
It sounds to me like what you're doing in your music is essentially this, because you're saying that the obstacles, if there are any, are all at the theoretical level, but when you actually sit and experience this and give yourself a chance to experience this, something real starts to emerge. Now, the work you do and your music, is it fed by a spiritual dimension to you, a spiritual intention also that you have, or is it really just the musicality?
I'd like to believe both. I grew up in a spiritual family, and hence I have a spiritual inclination.
Right.
I'm aware that there is commerce involved with the activities I do in public, but I look at commerce as a facilitation rather than a limiting factor.
Mhm.
So let's say you bought a ticket worth of 100 euros. We are in Schengen area. So then I'll ensure that you get your $100. I'll give you 150, but that's not the only thing I worry about. When in fact I get on stage, I pray that I want to be in a zone where music flows through me to heal people. Because in the end, we are all trying to find that peace within us that gives us happiness. So unless we are in harmony, I have observed that whether you dance or stay still, music has a harmonizing effect, and I try to focus on that element of music.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Of course, being from Maharashtra, we have very rich Varkari tradition in Maharashtra. I mean, here at the ashram, as you have seen,
Yes.
a lot of emphasis on this, and my Gurudev is bringing a lot of awareness
Yes.
of Lord Vithala, Rukmini, Panduranga, the whole idea to a new audience that has not
Yes.
been exposed to this.
Mhm.
I've heard from your music, I've listened, and of course, you also sing the name of Vithala a lot.
Of course.
What does that mean to you? What is the importance of Lord Vithala to you and your work?
It's my happy place, simply. And when you are happy, you tend to care for people and make them happy. Simply put, that's what it is. I love to share my happiness. Sometimes I am insistent on sharing my happiness. So there's hardly any concerts ever where I don't make people sing. It's a new, if you look at it, it's a new thing within the realm of Indian classical, semi-classical repertoire. But yeah, Vitala is my happy place. I go there and then I try to bring him to everyone that's listening to the music.
Beautiful. I think is a strange way to put it. Perhaps I feel it, but you see, whenever we're doing something that we love, we had a small exchange before
Mhm.
arriving here. I asked your age. You told me your age. I'll not reveal it on the podcast. And I said,
Born in 1976. It doesn't.
there you go. But I said, you looked really good for your age. And then your answer was that when you do something you love, right, it has this kind of effect. And I feel like, in general, all of us trying to be ourselves, all of us trying to find that peace, that happy place, trying to find love in our lives. Bhakti is all about that, is expressing love, experiencing love, all of this exchange. And I think it's so rare when somebody truly finds their happy place and is able to make that their entire life. And I must ask you, therefore, yes, you told a little bit the story of how it came to be, but it is not an easy thing to do, to just make this jump. I mean, for example, you mentioned your family, there was an emphasis on academics and all of this. How did they respond to, for example, you wanting to be doing this full time?
Well, I'm the first professional musician in my entire family. My father worked for a bank, for the same bank his entire life. So that's the background I came from. See, in the end, I think if you look at any parents, they are just trying to further their version of truth and happiness for their kids. So there was a little bit of restlessness. But once I was able to make them believe my version of truth and happiness was in music, we were all aligned. And then, yes, look, life is not a bed of roses. So it doesn't matter what you do, you're going to face challenges and all of those. But if you fall in love, you make time for all your chores, but also a lot of time for your love. That is how it works. In the hindsight, I mean, I'll give you an example. When I was doing my master's, my roommate, I had to share a room because we were on a very tight budget. My roommate was a PhD in. He was pursuing his PhD in electrical engineering. He used to spend long days in the lab, and he would return quite late, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. And I just started to get back in my daily routine where I would wake up early, 4:30, and then I couldn't sing because he just started to sleep. So I would take a pillow, I would go to the washroom, I would sit on the commode, I would put my face into that pillow and sing. Now, from the observer's perspective, it looks like, wow, that's amazing, such great sacrifice. For me, it was just love. You sneak out of your house for love sometimes. You dive into a place of unknown for love. For me, it was that.
You find a way to make it work.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's. I think more. You're right. Parents do struggle with this, and they do have the best of intentions. People in general, society, not just parents, they don't understand often what it means to be in love with something, to really pursue it. You can't rip open your heart and show somebody what you're feeling. You can only try to tell them.
In my case, I was fortunate though that both my parents were musically inclined.
Okay.
So my mother was my first guru as far as my music went, and my father would actually teach me these abhangs. It was a beautiful system. Every single Sunday, every weekend on Sunday, we were part of a bhajan group, and my father was serving the bank in different cities. And I remember he would come Saturday afternoon. He would take a shower and make me sit in front of him. He would teach me a bhajan every single weekend. And he was insistent that I should sing a new bhajan. That way, I know hundreds of bhajans now. But to be able to go into an uncertainty, like I mentioned, where you're at a risk of putting your passion into a commoditized world. And I think that is where the worry came from. But once your parents know that you are happy, so happy that you want to share that happiness, then I think things start to come to a place where, oh, I think I should not worry about my kid anymore.
Are you a parent?
No.
Right. Because I think it's one of those things where you see it from one side, and it's always curious to see how it would be
Although I must
extended.
tell you, everyone that I teach, when I teach them and when I see them struggling, it is like me being their side wheels while they are on a bike. And when they hit the note right, I let them go. When they're about to fall, I go back. So I have a sense of how it might be working.
Yes. Yeah, it's often like that with teachers and their
Yeah.
students. Yeah. If people would listen to you now, who they might not be in the career that they're particularly passionate about, or they're not doing something that they particularly love, but they have something that they know they do love, but they don't have maybe the courage or the example to follow how to do it, what would you advise them to do?
Dedicate all your free time to what you love. Then you're not losing out on anything. It's your free time. And then the passion will start making more time before you know it. See, the structure of the society has evolved and changed, and it still will continue to. But if you really look at the core necessities of a human being, there's a roti, kapda, or makan. Roti is food, kapda is clothes, kapda is clothes, and makan is a house. I mean, that is all you need.
Yeah.
So, this is what I did. I don't think I want to advise anyone anything, but this is what I did. I made sure that my needs were at a bare minimum. Because I was getting all my happiness from music, I did not eat out. I did not go to movies as much. I don't party. I'm a teetotaler, vegetarian. So, boring company in most places anyways. But if you are able to give all your love to music, focus, then the needs to get pleasure from elsewhere automatically diminishes. And if you really, there are two things. People are they are infatuated with the idea that they really want to do something.
Yes.
And that's when I want to say ki don't make a drastic change. First, make sure that all your free time is given. If you can't, then you are in a false idea that I want to do music full time. If your hunger stays after all the free time is used up, then you might qualify to try to do it full time. And then there is a whole human side to that. To be able to sing is a necessary but not a sufficient condition. Need to be able to travel. You need to be able to be fit. You need to be able to put yourself out there. You should be a people's person. You should be able to communicate with all of them. You should go across geographies. Should be okay with different kinds of food, different kinds of weather and time zones. And then you can be a successful musician the way the
Right.
world pursues one,
Yeah.
perceives one. So, but it always begins with give all your free time to your passion and let it grow.
I like that. I like a lot of your idea, what you said about the infatuation with ideas also. I think people have that in both directions. They're
Yeah.
infatuated with the idea of the right life,
Mhm.
and often they don't pursue something that is much more true to them because they have to check all the boxes.
Yeah, because like we discussed in the beginning, it's from outside in.
Yeah.
Are the boxes created from observation first or inquiry first?
Mm-hmm.
If it is inquiry and the observation comes from the inquiry within, then it perhaps is the right observation. Just looking at you, how strong you are, how tall you are, I can't grow any so I should just pick something else that I can, right?
Right.
So in general, I think it's quite ironic, but while we are within ourselves, we spend the least time with ourselves. We don't spend time. I mean, if you ask, I'm sure you're on a spiritual path, so you do. But if you ask people, what is the time when you spend time with yourself? Have you blocked it out? The answer would be, unfortunately, a no. And unless you spend time with the person you are the most with, which is you, then you are only going to create check boxes out of what you look around and indulge in. And primarily, I think that becomes a challenge for people to really look for the happiness that they need. As you said, what is the right way of living is the right way that is for you.
Mm-hmm.
What is the right way? You try to excel in what you do. And while you do that, you make sure that everyone around you grows with you. If that is something you do, then you don't need to evaluate whether there is a box like that if it exists in the world. If it doesn't, you should invent it.
Nice. No, you're right. You're right. It's all about this be yourself and this uniqueness in a way, and to really understand what is real for you. And it does require that time. It does require that attention. I think also one of the things that people struggle with, comparison, always.
Mhm.
Thinking that what the other one has,
Mhm.
I should have the same or in the
Mhm.
same way. And no two paths are the same.
Mhm.
And I think one of the big problems from that is pressure.
Mhm.
Whether always from outside in, as you were saying, but the pressures that we all accept from the outside, from our parents, from our gurus, from our teachers, from society, from whatever it may be. And I think sometimes people need to, it's not resist the pressures, but in a sense, I feel like there needs to be some courage to admit what we do feel, what we don't feel, what we actually want, what we don't want,
Absolutely.
our capacity. Sometimes we're just not capable of certain things.
Absolutely.
A bit more honesty is needed sometimes, but I don't think we can find it precisely because of everything you said. We wear masks.
Sadhana is the fuel that gives you that capacity.
Right.
Maybe if someone feels they don't have the courage, they don't have enough sadhana. Person who does sadhana will never be, there will be no dearth of courage. If I know my truth, I know my truth.
Right.
And it's quite silly to ask someone for your truth when you are the person who spend the most time with yourself. If you have your sadhana, the sadhana will answer. The sadhana will align your internal moral compass in the direction that you should be. Now, the only hindrance is you should not allow the precedents to change the direction of your compass. And like I mentioned, the only few things that need to be taken care of is you're not hurting anyone willfully.
Right.
You're being kind. You're being grateful. You're being compassionate. You are not snatching joy, but you're actually distributing the joy and growing it. As long as all of these things are in place and are directing you to the compass direction, then it is a shame to not listen to yourself.
I agree. I feel like we've talked about somehow the not negative, limiting external influences, but what about positive ones? Because there's also a lot of positive external influence that can come to us. Your inspirations, teachers, gurus. Like, what was your...
Like I said, I was born in a family that was a supporter of art. Growing up, it could be any festival. All the festivals, all the celebrations, they ended in a music, what we call baitak. You all sit together and sing together. So music has been a very frequent, necessary part of my life. So I'm very grateful for being in a family that afforded that. My Guruji, to be able to learn ragas and songs and compositions and improvisation and honing your skill, of course it's a journey. And it's a journey of many lifetimes, not one. But to see a reason, to see it as a perennial flowing river that bathes you in happiness is what happened when I started to learn from Pandit Jitendra Abhisheki. I was very young. I finished my 10th grade, but he was the master of masters. So people who have all been all-stars would then train with him because they want to break the glass ceiling. And I'm very grateful that he accepted me. I was his last disciple. I was very grateful that he accepted me because when I spent time with him, suddenly music, which was a topic of amusement that I voraciously consumed, became a way of life. It was not something that I look forward to consume. I want to learn more ragas. I want to hit this particular benchmark. It became like breathing. Mindfully breathing. And then once music sets in your breath, then you can't separate it. That is what happened at my Guruji's place. So I'm very grateful to him. And then there were strange incidences which at the time felt like challenges, but they turned to be blessings. Sometimes, your ego breaks because of a certain situation, but it only, like I said, fuels your sadhana. And that is all that I'm grateful for. While in the moment, some things might feel unpleasant or sad, when you really look back, it becomes a beautiful page in the book of your life.
I can very much relate to that. Especially with my Guruji as well. Creating a lot of situations for learning, opportunities for growing. And you don't always see things in the
No,
moment.
you never. In the moment, you never. It's very hard. I gave, while we were talking, when our usual tabla player was absent, my Guruji would say, take that dagga and play the theka. And I used to hate it. Hate it. Why? Because playing and singing at the same time is a little tricky. But maybe it was not unintentional. My Guruji was trying to give me that extra edge where I'll be completely liberated with the meter of the time and fly with it. So that opportunity was giving me wings of rhythm. Um, there are so many different things like this. In fact, when I started to learn from my Guruji, um, you know, I went, I actually was introduced by a person that my Guruji could not say no to. So I had a foot in the door. But that's all there was. One foot in the door, because first I was told that he's not around. Come a week after, things like that. And then eventually I met with an accident. I had a broken bone, had my hand in a sleeve,
Right.
and I showed up. And thankfully that day my Guruji opened the door himself. And then he said, what happened? I was like, I fell in the morning. And he said, why did you come? And I just looked down. In that moment, he probably felt that I'm not the one to give up. It's not some young boy trying to just get a free ride. And that's when my journey started. So these were all tests. I didn't understand. Even after coming in, he would say, take the Tanpura, go upstairs, do your Shadja sadhana, which is you park yourself on just one note and focus. And that, imagine I'm a teenager at that age to just, it's very difficult. I had done it, but I had done it at my home. Here, when I went, there was an expectation of learning something. And when I was not learning, obviously I was, but I didn't know. Then one day, when I was sitting in the back of a session, he said, send that boy in front. And then I sang something to be him, which was composed by him. And then he said, okay, from tomorrow, come at 4 o'clock in the morning. And that's how things started to change. But I think it's like, nowadays people take 15, 20 photos because there's no film that costs anything. It's all free. But it is also that we never go back to those photos.
True.
And then I think those challenges have just increased the value of every single lesson that challenge taught. It was not just a piece of information. In the infinite time within the lifetime that we live, you don't have infinite memory. You have only finite memory. In the brain, the finite memory selection is based, I think, on how you get through those challenges. How do a few things actually deeply affect you? And I think for all of those things, I'm very grateful.
Yeah, as I said, I listen to you and I can relate. I know what you mean. I think it's also for a lot of people, they don't know. Challenges can sound scary. Let's put it like this. Yeah, people, when they hear about this, like, does it have to be full of challenges? Does life have to be like this? People often want things to come easy.
The part of the reason is because we are looking at the end goal and then looking at the challenge as a hindrance.
Yeah.
If you look at challenge as an experience, that will lead you to the right goal on its own, then it will become easy. We are hell-bent. Mithya dhava manachi marji devachi. You are hell-bent doing something, but then there is something the divine has already decided for you. So if you look at every challenge in a way with a little bit of patience and faith, that it will indeed lead you to the place that you should be in, then not be the tug of war that you try to do.
It's true. I think again when we speak about, this is a perspective which you're giving. It's a way of facing challenges in a way that is more productive, more, I would say, honest and true. I think the problem with challenges as well to people is they don't know the level of work or dedication it takes to sometimes achieve the dreams and the ideas that they place in their head. I'm curious to ask you, I mean, to become the musician that you are today, how much work do you think you really put in? How many hours of learning and studying?
You
and
know,
all
you
this?
don't count what you love.
Right.
I mean, if you...
But to give an idea, just because people sometimes, I ask this, you know why I ask this? Because sometimes people think, oh, I'll do an hour of singing class a week and I really want to become as good as Mahesh is.
No, fall in love as much as I have, and then you will. Then you will know what it is. I mean, really, what is your favorite food?
Me?
Yes.
Corn, sweet corn.
Do you count the number of grains that you eat?
No.
Then why should you count the number of hours when you sing?
I agree with you.
So the answer is, eat corn first until your stomach is full, then until your heart is full. Sing until your voice is tired, and then after your heart is full. Then sleep. First sing till you fall asleep, and then sing till your sleep just goes away.
Yeah, it's good advice. I had to ask you, just because as I'm also a teacher, the most common thing I get is people saying, oh, I want to have knowledge like you, or I want to be able to sing like this one, but they don't understand, I guess, the roadmap to get there. It's not, even if it's about falling in love, and I do agree with you 100%, there is nothing really that replaces that. I think a lot of people have fantasies about what it means to become all these things.
Well, then maybe a little more objective. I see what you're trying to ask is, focus on iterations.
Right.
More than expanse. The iteration spins out the expanse automatically.
Yeah, I think that's correct.
So we are in avartans, right? We do avartans of mantras. We don't sing 100-page mantra. There's a reason for that. In the repetition and cyclicity and iterative nature of what we do, it creates a resonant vibration like the sound bowl and starts amplifying it and filling it out. And once it fills it out, then the wisdom automatically starts to surface out of that information. And so if there is one, until you can feel that surfacing, keep on doing it. And you don't know the count. It's a very subjective thing. Sometimes you will be able to get something right away, and then that's a good reason to keep on repeating because you got it in the first place.
Right.
Sometimes you don't. And so you do it until you can do it, and then do it because you can do it and make it shine.
Beautiful. There's one question I must ask you. I ask this of every singer.
Sure.
Do you think anybody can learn to sing, or it's a
Absolutely.
talent?
I have no doubt. Anyone that can breathe can sing.
Well?
Yes. So you have to define what well is.
Great. Let's
Who
do it.
decides? Who decides?
What does it mean to you, singing well?
If I am singing and it makes me happy, I'm singing very well.
And if it makes suffering to the other people
That's
who hear
their
it?
problem. That's not your
Got it.
problem. That's
Some people will love to hear that from you, I'm telling you right now.
no, but I'll tell you, there has been not a single place, and believe me, I've done hundreds of concerts
That's
all
why I'm
over
asking.
the world. There has never been a single place where I have repented the idea of making people sing. Everyone sings well. Everyone sings well. He was there in a concert 2 days ago. Even in the morning, I mean, I ended up singing and teaching and sharing a song that they never heard. We made decent music. And I was singing. They were not unhappy. They were singing. I was not unhappy. We were all smiling. There is always going to be someone that complains about what you get joy from. Try to increase the company of people that don't. As simple as that.
That's a very
Anybody
good
can
advice.
sing. I have not a sliver of doubt in my mind.
It's a very nice, hopeful message for a lot of people. It's just.
See, I'll tell you what it is. Anyone that can feel, anyone that can cry, anyone that can smile, anyone that has an emotional response to a stimulus can sing, because singing is capturing exactly that. Language is capturing exactly that. If you can talk, you can sing. If you can articulate, you can sing. Yes. Now, articulation happens at different levels. And then, until a certain point of articulation, what is being said cannot be understood. But again, that is the problem of the person you're talking to. You are in the end trying to express. I believe music is a tool that exists to express, not impress. So the whole judgment thing does not exist. Yes. Now, if you want to put yourself into the commodity market, then you have to please the people. And then we are talking about pro level. And pro level, it doesn't matter what you do, you have to put in a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
And then you need to have a certain kind of skill. I'm not talking about can anyone become a professional singer? Then the parameters might change. But can anybody sing? Absolutely.
Beautiful. Thank you. No, I think that's it. That in terms of an answer, I don't think we need to complicate it more than that, because I think a lot of people they really confuse those two things.
Mm-hmm.
They put these high, professional singer standards in their
that's the
mind.
reason. Outside
External, yeah. Agreed.
Who is listening to your music? Who do you want to sing? Ultimately, the God. If the God is not complaining, why do you care about anyone else?
I agree. Can I share something with you? So
Yes.
I once shared this in a talk I was giving. I was giving a lecture, and I said, if I may be very honest with all of you here, and there was maybe 200 people there, I said, I don't care what any of you think about me. And they all took it a little bit like, they weren't sure whether to be offended by it or not. They were a little just taken aback. And I said, and I say this because you don't know me. You are not who I answer to. I am here to serve. Don't misunderstand. I would like to express. I would like to share. But there is only one person whose opinion really matters to me. Right. And as long as I feel that that person and I are in a good relationship, we're on good terms, I'm not much bothered about what anybody else has to say. One person came to me after that, and they said to me that it resonates with me what you said. It makes a lot of sense. But, here's my but, the person said. When I feel like I'm there to serve, automatically I care what the other people think. Because I'm there to serve them. How do you square that? How do you balance that with this, I don't care what they think, but I'm here to serve you, therefore I also care what you think?
Yes. Then, if you are a vegetarian, I should not serve you meat. As easy as that. Now we are talking about a transaction. Whether it is done in the right spirit, it is a transaction. If you actually look at the idea of service, the idea of service is akarma, where the doing is a one-sided trade. I'm doing it not to make you happy. I'm serving because serving is the right thing for me to do. Whether you accept it with happiness or not, perhaps might amplify my happiness, but if you didn't, shouldn't diminish my happiness. That is the idea of serving, the way I understand.
Right.
What you're talking about again is a transactional world. Where, okay, I'm serving you, I get a good 5-star rating, then I will be in business. Again, then that's a different parameter altogether. And we are talking about coming from the right place. See, from whatever I've observed so far, Shabri, if you look at, there's so many examples. And we only think Shri Ram loved. Maybe he didn't. But he was so happy with the service that the service actually decided the taste.
Right.
And in that spirit, I think we should not really worry about whether the service has been well received or not. The intention is primary and paramount. We are human beings. We will make mistakes. But as long as they are done in the right attitude and intention, we will only grow. Not just us, but the people that we are serving too.
You use this term transactional, and I agree with you. But what about when it's between us and God? It's relational, not so much transactional. And of course, I completely agree with you in the principle of akarma. You do it because it's the right thing for you to do. But with God, I always feel like there's the other dimension to it, where it's not so much about it just being the right thing to do. It's, I want to please you. I want to do something good for you, God, because of love that I have for you, because of my bhakti, because of what you mean to me. I want to do something that is pleasing for you. And there should be some space for that. It's relationship, not so much transaction. I'm not doing business with God,
agree.
right?
I agree.
Would that change anything in the way you approach?
Absolutely not. Why would it change anything? What do you think? If you had $1 million and you gave God $100,000, if you are $100 and you give you $100,
much more.
Who is going to be more impressed?
Of course, yeah.
And then does it matter what is given in the end? What matters? What is being served? What is the intention and sentiment behind serving?
I like that. Intention is paramount.
Yeah.
I'm happy with that. Well, Mahesh, it was really a pleasure to talk to you about all of this. I think, thank you very much for everything you shared.
Thank you so much. I loved this conversation.
Thank you. I hope one day we can have another one.
Certainly. Tathastu.
Thank you very much.